Hi everyone. Ever since the news of the Tatas getting back Air India from the government broke out, the one thought on everybody's mind is, will Tata be able to pull the airline out from the deep well of troubles and losses it has been incurring in its long journey? But I think the bigger thought to cater to first is that what led to the downfall of India's oldest and most venerable airline? One of the biggest reasons for Air India's downfall was the irrational decision making, which is easily illustrated by dispatching of fuel guzzling wide bodied aircrafts on domestic routes, whereas these are meant for international travels, which as a result expounded operating losses of 400 crores on an average annually. Then you have the disastrous merger with Indian Airlines, which was meant to facilitate better synergy between the two airlines, but turned out disastrous since operations even after merger were running in isolation. This was then followed by the huge remuneration packages offered to employees, especially to the pilots and aircraft maintenance engineers. And last but not the least, the failure to monetize and optimize the assets such as aircraft maintenance, cabin catering, ground handling, and hotel setups, all ringing the airline's on cash registers without any third party assistance strategies to help with the piling cost. The list can go on, but you get the picture, I think. All this ultimately led to the Maharaja airline accumulating staggering losses of more than 70,000 crores till 2021. So now these legacies so discussed are knocking on the doors of Tatas every day asking the same question: what's the plan? So in today's episode, let's discuss how Tata already has strategies in motion and is gearing up the walk down Air India to its rejuvenation, and what other judicious and prudent grand strategy is in the making, which is surely bound to make it profitable in the future to come. So first, let's talk about the strategical actions which have already been implemented by Tata, and then discuss the yet to be finalized grand strategy which is still a work in motion. So as we discussed, one of the major issues with Air India has been that the airlines did not make use of the efficient business practices which are prevalent today in the airlines industry, and instead set up its own shops for maintenance and repair of the aircrafts and engines which weren't even being used after one point of time, because of the huge import cost on the parts and machinery which the company had to pay for. So in spite of the fact that there was already a MRO shop in India, the aircrafts had to visit MROs at Dubai and Singapore, which ultimately led to more costs in terms of the foreign exchange. I know it was all kinds of messed up. So in order to rectify this situation, the Tatas have already signed a sales and leaseback deal with Willis Lease Finance, under which this company will buy back the engines of the aircraft and lease back newer engines to Air India, along with the future repair and maintenance costs covered under a very powerful model known as Power by the Hour. This model was first introduced by Rolls-Royce back in the late 1990s and can be said to be the first subscription model used by a firm. You see people, Rolls-Royce initially used to provide only jet engines to the airlines without any added services, and certain things became evident to them. See, whenever an airline company faced an unexpected engine failure, it costed millions to them in terms of engine replacement cost, lost flight revenue, need for backup aircraft, buffer engine inventory, etc. So it was pretty evident to Rolls-Royce that all this was an unwarranted headache for them. The airlines did not want to be in the jet engine business. It was Rolls-Royce's forte. The airlines instead wanted to focus on flying passengers and making money. And this is when Rolls-Royce came out with their subscription economy model, or in other terms, the Power by the Hour model. Now under this model, the service providing company, which in Air India's case is now Willis Lease, will be paid a pre-decided amount for each hour the aircraft flies, and this amount calculated during operation hours of the aircraft is then considered as the payment for future maintenance and repair requirements. This model is a significant consideration for any airline provider because it provides three major advantages to them. First of all, it completely eradicates the cost of airline firm, which, like in the case of Air India, earlier was being eroded in the form of maintenance premise cost, engineers and other crew salaries, engine liability insurance, and engine inventory. Secondly, the airlines now do not have to worry about regular technical checkups and they need not be dependent on the KPIs and early warning signals since this will all be taken care by the service provider now. And lastly, the model creates a win-win situation for both the airline and the service provider. Since the service provider is now motivated more than ever to keep your plane operational for as long as possible since they now have a monetary stake involved in it. This is how Tata has already made sure that it rectifies all the mistakes related to at least the engines, repairs, and maintenance aspect of Air India. And as a result, save tons of overhead costs, which can in time help pay off that hefty 15,000 crore debt the airline has accumulated. Now coming on to the strategy part, which is yet to be finalized. For this, first let's understand the Tata's airline portfolio. Today, Tata owns 51% stake in Vistara, 83.5% stake in Air Asia India, and as we know, wholly owns the Air India and its subsidiary Air India Express. Now, as per the strategic initiative which Tata has in mind, it is thinking of merging all three airlines into one entity and bring all the airlines under one single banner. But the question is, why is Tata taking this strategic move of merging all the airlines? Well, people, if you see from a historical perspective, all big airline mergers of the world like United and Continental merger or Delta and the Northwest merger have made them more profitable and efficient, eliminating the bottlenecks as well as consolidating the assets for better operational efficacies. So let's deep dive a bit more and try to understand how this would actually pan out. For starters, let's first understand the financials of an airline business. But before we start, the numbers presented are very simplistic and only for the sake of understanding purposes and are not a real depiction in any case. So say, an airline company, Air Hind, has 1,000 people traveling through their fleet of 10 planes, which means 100 people capacity per plane. And if the ticket cost is say 1,000 rupees, so the total revenue per month is 10 lakhs. Now let's say Air Hind's planes also provide services to carry freight. So this can be marked as other revenues and say these set at about 1 lakh per month. Total revenue now for Air Hind is 11 lakhs per month. Now for expenses, the operating and direct expenses are 4 lakhs per month. Employee benefit expenses, which include salaries and bonuses, are 2 lakhs per month. Depreciation and amortization expenses, which are calculated for tangible and intangible assets, value calculation are 3 lakhs per month. And other miscellaneous expenses are 1 lakh. So total expenses come out to be 10 lakhs per month. Hence total profit comes out to be 1 lakh per month. Now let's suppose there were 3 such airlines and they were going for merger. Then as per calculations, the first thing we can notice is that among the expenses, the operating and direct expenses are the highest expenses incurred by an airline firm. So how will the merger help here? Well, you see, as the airlines will be merged, it will lead to 3 major things happening. Number 1. The overlapping routes of the airlines which draw these operating expenses individually for all the 3 airlines will be reduced to just one revamped and optimized network of routes. So initially, where the operating expenses for the 3 airlines were 12 lakhs combined, these expenses will be reduced to just 6 lakhs now. But how did we achieve this figure of 6 lakhs? Well, you see, the figure is 6 lakhs and not 4 lakhs because the aircraft fleet for the merged entity has now increased, and so will the queue of the aircrafts operating every day on these routes, which will increase the expenses as more flights are now operating every day for Air Hind. As per a report from PwC, as the airlines merge into one single brand entity, they tend to become more efficient in terms of better on-time performance, fewer cancellations, and fewer mishandled bags. And these benefits get more pronounced at the larger airports where the chaos is more prevalent. This is because as the merged entities' expenses keep on reducing over time, they invest more in improving their operations to provide better services to their customers in the endeavor of building an impeccable brand image. Number 3. Since the merged airline now has both different quality of airplane fleet and a larger quantity, they will be willing to diversify and expand their routes to more places, and that too at the expense of just adding another spoke to the airline hub and spoke model. This as a result will provide more airline coverage not just domestically but also globally to the people of the nation and more revenue to the airline. This is specifically evident in the case of Air India and Vistara, since both the airlines hold the bilateral rights allocated to them by the government, which will further help them in developing denser route networks. And not only this, from the customer's perspective, by adding new routes to the network, the airlines become more attractive to more and more customers. When they decide which carrier to fly, their only consideration is not always the fare, rather the total travel time as well. Apart from these points, there is one other major concept which contributes to a merged airline's advantages, that is economies of scale. To discuss this further, people, since our example we had taken 3 airlines. So obviously the fixed cost of depreciation and amortization will be different for all 3 as well. So as the airlines merge, this cost will be reduced owing to both the assets reduction as well as the economies of scale. To better understand, as the merged airline is bigger, so the overhead cost per passenger carried will decline, since the combined reduced fixed cost has come down from 9 lakhs to just 5 lakhs now. But how this figure becomes 5 lakhs from 3 lakhs, that is the depreciation and amortization cost? This again can be explained with the same principle we used earlier. You see, because the corporate office and regional office staff will increase, so the office space will have to increase, as a result which would require added cost. And this 5 lakhs can now be spread across 3,000 people instead of just 1,000 people. And so the per passenger cost comes out to be just 166 rupees as compared to 300 rupees, which is how the airlines enjoy the economies of scale. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the full-fledged breakdown of the strategy which Tata is gearing to employ to turn the debt-ridden but historically revered Air India back to the glory state and turn the aviation business into one of the greatest private sector turnarounds of India. To reiterate again, Tata has already put in place agreements with third-party vendors to cover the airlines under the power by the hour model in order to save tons of maintenance and repair costs. They are also taking the route of merger, following the success of big international players, so that a single big airline brand could bring operational efficiencies and also help develop more denser networks and enjoy economies of scale for higher profits. All this is not an overnight phenomenon and will obviously take at least 4 to 5 years to be properly planned and implemented, so that they do not repeat the past mistakes of Air India and its decline. Here's hoping it actually turns out all gold for the Tatas, so that our nation can enjoy a global world-class airline carrier of its own. If you like the content, please subscribe to the channel and do not forget to hit that like button below. I'll be back with another such knowledgeful episode. Until then, mindfulness signing off.